We want to say fair use. We're just going to cover this story here. Uh, let's see. Rodney Hinton Jr. Let's see if we can get that up here. Rodney Hinton Jr. He filed a $25 million lawsuit. This is great, man. This is great. This is great. I'm showing you. I've been showing you guys something here, and this is a perfect example to show you the sovereignty. To show you the sovereignty of our people. To show you the sovereignty of our people. Because I know a lot of our Israelite camps saying we're still under captivity. There are laws set, even for those who think you're under captivity, for you to go and argue your sovereign case against the people who occupy your land. International law. There's a thing called international law, Human Rights Association, and the human rights law and humanitarian law. There's an international committee that all the sovereign citizens, all the sovereign states have come together to create international law for humanitarians and human rights laws. They say the same thing, basically. Okay? And I'm going to show you that. And I'm going to show you how this brother, fair use, how this brother that filed his own, he's gonna act as his own lawyer in court, and he filed a $25 million lawsuit after I'm not promoting going and killing innocent people because somebody of their nation. That's not God. Because somebody of their nation hurt somebody in your nation or hurt you, you go kill an innocent one of their nation. That's not right. That's not justice, right? Because you can't go around killing these people. They're going to be worshiping. They're going to be serving, bowing down, trying to serve Christ. We're going to take them captive. We're going to hold them for possession for 1,000 years, and then they get free. They get free to worship Christ, but we're going to be above all the nations. So we just can't go around killing innocent people that ain't never did nothing. That was their ancestors that did it. Okay, they participate and they gonna get punished for their work in holding us in captivity, in being a part of the mob. They are guilty of being a mob. You're gonna see this in the lawsuit. That's what they always have been guilty of. The people who say their grandfathers brought them over here. They weren't the United States. They were in the United Colonies. We got done a video on that, and they brought people over here. They chopped down the cherry tree. They took over government. They created a coup, made their own laws. Wisdom of Solomon 2. Read that, starting at 10, when you want to see how they oppress the poor and righteous, man. They made their strength would be the making of new laws, to take sovereignty from us, steal our sovereignty, usurp our sovereign authority, to subvert our sovereignty into to them being sovereign through the worshiping of the image of the beast, Caesar Borgia, and calling themselves white, and creating a mob protection. They brought millions of people over here to protect their interests, and they created a government system. They made us ignorant of our sovereignty and what our rights were. They made us ignorant of the rights of humane laws and humanitarian laws that all the sovereign nations put together to make sure while they were occupying the indigenous people all over the earth that they wouldn't mistreat them, right? That they wouldn't mistreat them. God set that in their heart to do. Because why would the wicked devil make laws and form a committee to make sure that they checked each other to make sure they didn't mistreat anybody while they were sovereign in their lands? They abolished slavery. First they was going with slavery. And then God put it in their conscience after we were destroyed that slavery was wrong. Not only that, but God put it in their conscience to create a committee that would check and the balance and oversee how they treated us, humanitarians and humanely. Right? God did that. So don't say we still in slavery when God didn't set a whole law up for us to use when they are treating us inhumane, when they are humiliating for their interests, our unalienable rights. So don't say we're still in slavery. You in slavery. Because you decided, like Kanye West said, you decided to check yourself back in slavery to get them crumbs they was offering under the table. All right? So let's start out fair use. Let's watch this lawsuit. Let's watch this first video.
Rodney Hinton Jr., who is accused of intentionally running down Deputy Larry Henderson, filed this 5-page civil lawsuit on Thursday. He did so himself without an attorney. Hinton says his civil rights were violated. I looked through the complaints. The defendants include the Cincinnati Police Department, the Hamilton County Justice Center, and 10 unnamed officers and deputies. Hinton claims excessive force used by police during his arrest resulted in him having physical injuries. He also focused on this: Hamilton County deputies packing the room for his arraignment on May 3rd.
Good morning, Mr. Hinton.
Hinton claims that coordinated presence was, quote, clearly intended to intimidate.
So we was wondering why he was moving and like he was in a lot of pain. We thought it was from the car accident, right? But we see now that it was from them. Those people violated their oath of office and they attacked a sovereign citizen, even knowing that it was inhumane. He had to receive due process first. He had to be proven guilty. And even if they know he was guilty, they still was not supposed to take it in their own hands to commit judgment on him until he went to trial. Because why? I'm going to show you why in this next video. We're going to refer back to this video again, but I'm going to show you quickly another video that shows you what international law says. This is the time those telemarketers. International law says must happen when you're occupying in someone else's country. You're not supposed to be there. And if you're one of your citizens that you brought over here, if one of the people you brought over here violated the sovereign citizens' rights or harmed them, you are supposed to chastise your citizen according to international law, sovereignty, common law. You were supposed to deport them, either put them in jail for 10 years, $100,000 fine, deport them. And if they murdered one of our citizens, they were supposed to receive the death penalty. That's the law. That's our sovereign law. That's what they agreed to, international law. Peace and Friendship Treaty, Constitution, rights of indigenous people. Their citizens, the United States white citizens, they call themselves white, all of them. We showed you who all was considered white. Anybody that come under and be naturalized by citizens by the United States for their colonies, they call them United States, U.S. That's what, they tweaking it to make it, to hide the fact that they are still in our sovereign rights. We are over them. Thank you, Brother Tazariak, that gave that lesson, taught me today that there is no such thing as a spiritual Jew. When they say they're spiritual Jews, they're stealing our sovereignty again. That's another way through religion that they try to steal our sovereignty our rights. They say they got white privileges. They cannot have white privileges in our land. Go back to the Caucasus Mountains or wherever you came from if you want to be white. You want to have privileges, you got to be in your own land to have sovereign privileges over the land. That's international law, humanitarian law, human rights law. That's what all the sovereign states have came up with to protect us. It was ordained by God. I just went over all of that. So we're gonna show you a representative. China's representing humanitarian laws. He's gonna show you. He's gonna show you real quick what to do, what it consists of. All right, we're gonna show you just real quick. He's gonna show you what the law is on people occupying other people's land.
While Israel withdrew its physical military presence from Gaza in 2005, this did not change the status as an occupying power, a position this court affirmed in its OPT advisory opinion.
Okay, what he's saying, even though Israel left Gaza as occupying Gaza, they did not change their jurisdiction. They did not stop being lords over Gaza. Okay? They left the country physically, but they still occupied them according to their laws, applied their laws and their jurisdiction on Gaza. He's gonna show you what the rules to that is.
In armed conflict, particularly in the situations of occupation, Israel's obligations as occupied power, specifically in relation to the third party's presence and activities, derive from two fundamental sources of law: international humanitarian law and international human rights law.
He said they derive their power and their law from two sources. And you heard what he said: international human rights law and international humanitarian laws. And all the sovereign countries agreed to this, and it was ordained by God as a check and balances of people living in the indigenous people land. All right, let's keep watching.
In terms of obligations of Israel as occupied power under international humanitarian law, four fundamental sources should be noted: the Hague Regulations, the Fourth Geneva Convention, the First Protocol, and the customary international law. From these sources emerge five principal obligations, which I will examine in turn. First, Israel has the undisputed primary responsibility to ensure the basic needs of civilians.
You hear that? United States, we're going to replace Israel. This is international law, so this is ordained for all occupying military, because the military stand out first. That's what they threaten you with first, and then they threaten you with mob. They threaten you with the mob. We're going to see how that, we're going to go back and show you what that lawsuit is. And it's always been the United States practice for land grab and mob justice, right? So one of the United States basic principles and one of the basic things they have to do for us, we are civilians. That means we're not their military and we are not their citizens. We are a sovereign country that they have came in and forced their occupation on. We can't get them out because they got a powerful army. But based on these checks and balances from these Department of Human Rights and humanitarian laws enforced by all the sovereign countries. They are to assure our basic needs. We shouldn't have to pay for water. We shouldn't have to pay for food. We shouldn't have to pay for heat. We shouldn't have to pay for housing. But because they have taken over our resources and they start, and they've taken charge of it. We can't hunt no more freely. They killed all the buffalo. We can't go hunt for our food because we hunters and gatherers. We can't even grow food in our backyards. It's illegal to grow so many fruit trees. The stuff we need to keep us living, fruit and vegetables. We can't have livestock. Israel can't even own sheep. Do you know that it was against the law for a black man to own a sheep farm? Because they said the wound of a sheep is so much like a human that they couldn't trust us with the sheep, that we wouldn't do some ungodly bestiality thing, and they do it all the time. But they couldn't trust us. The people with the law from God command not to do bestiality. They couldn't trust us not to do it, and God entrusted us with all the animals. But they are the one that don't have the law, so they feel like they can do anything because they don't have law. They don't have the law. But basic needs for the civilians, they supposed to provide that because it's ours anyway. Not sell it back to us, not steal it from us and sell it back to us and make us support their grocery stores, their Walmarts. Walmart should be deported because they are selling the indigenous people the goods that they produce on their land, on our land. They planted our seeds in our ground, paid somebody pennies to go and pick the vegetables, and then sold it to us. They stole our businesses. Let's keep listening.
In the occupied territory, the obligation explicitly required by Article 55, Paragraph 1 of the Fourth Geneva Convention.
This is the Fourth Geneva Convention, the Paragraph 55. And she gave you the page number. One of the Fourth Geneva Convention's articles, okay?
Article 69, Paragraph 1 of the First Protocol. These provisions require Israel to ensure to the fullest extent all supplies essential for civilian survival in the OPT.
You see what I'm saying? For us to survive, that's what the Moor's been trying to tell you, man. The Geneva Convention. The rights of the people who indigenous people, we're supposed to go out and be able to gather the trees. They made sure they cut that off. They claimed everything of ours. They claimed it. The United States, the fake government, claimed all of our land, all of the rights to our land. We had 200 million acres when we came out of slavery. 20 million, was it 2 million? 2 million families, 20 million acres when we came out of slavery we was claiming. The free man was claiming. The free man was claiming. That was not the Jews or the Negroes few Negroes they brought over here. That was the Northern Kingdom that had been free all of that time. The Seminole Indians, the runaways, we had been free all that time. We went to the courts and claimed that we claimed and showed proof by our families that we had rights to the land. And they said a black man, they had classified us all as Negroes. All the Indians, they classified them as Negroes, meaning they brought us over here and we were not already here when they got here. That's what Nate and General Yohana and all these guys they overlooked that. They overlooked that. And the families going to claim their land, the Northern Kingdom claiming their land. That wasn't just Gad. They didn't move all the northern kingdoms off this land. If they had it, they'd have killed all of Gad, because Gad wasn't being slaves. Gad wasn't trying to be no slaves. So they would have killed all the northern kingdom, all Gad and all Issachar, if they still didn't have a fighting group of northern kingdoms, the remnant that knew that they were Israelites. If they didn't have them still in the land, and a lot of them ran to Mexico, the northern kingdom ran out west and down in Mexico in different places to be safe from, Little Bighorn, Custer's massacre. Who do you think did that? That wasn't all Gad. That was the northern kingdom. Because Gad was overtaken by troops, right? So if Gad was overthrown by troops, then who was these people running in Mexico? The Seminole Indian, the Buffalo Soldiers. Who were those people that stayed free? But they went across the border and hid in Mexico. That was the northern kingdom. Okay? So let's keep watching. He's telling you, I'm going to be quiet and let him finish telling you what the obligations of Israel, any occupied group, you can replace that with the United States, what their responsibility according to this Geneva Convention and these people that's running the checks and balances on people who occupy other people's land. Let's keep listening. This rule is across the board.
Second, Israel has an obligation to agree to humanitarian assistance from third parties when the population in the OPT is inadequately supplied. This is not a discretionary choice. Refusing such assistance.
You hear what he said? This is not discretionary. United States can't decide, well, we'll see what's best for us first, and then we'll give these niggas what's left. We'll give them what we want to give them. They got to provide all of our basic needs. From housing and not stacking us up in projects. Why do you think they've been giving us all this stuff? Because the presidents has been following the World Council. All the presidents before Trump, before we start waking up, they was following the World Council because they wanted to stay in good grace with the World Council, the Geneva Convention, the Rights of Human Rights Division, the humanitarian laws. They wanted to stay in good grace because why? They wanted to be seen as the leaders of morals. They a Christian country. You can trust us. Let us lead you in morality. We get to go around and check. They were the checkers of these other countries to make sure that China and Russia, remember, China, Russia, and everywhere else was treating their people right. Their own people, especially the indigenous people of their land. They was making sure that they treated everybody humanely, and because they were humanitarians. They were leaders they was the bright leaders in the Geneva Convention. They made sure you didn't mistreat in war, you didn't torture in war. And if you tortured one of their soldiers in war, then they would go find the people who did the torturing. That's what they, and they would court-martial you. That's what they did for the Franks, for the Germans that was supposed to have tortured the Israelis, the fake Israelites. In years later, they went and found them and locked them up, prosecuted them. The people that was in charge of the Holocaust, the humanitarians caught the people who so-called destroyed people in the gas chambers, the Jewish people, right? That's why, they kept doing what they did for us. built projects, you know, food stamps. But at all the time they were giving us stuff, they was devising plots to keep us, cut us off from being a nation. They give you welfare, but they put the men out of the house. You can't make soldiers out of them men. The woman, they reversed the order, the woman in charge of the household instead of the man being in charge of the household. We're going to give you this white Jesus. We're going to tell you you ain't got to keep God's laws and keep you out of fellowship with the Most High. We cutting you off from being a people, and we're going to be the gods of the earth. And if we can keep you out of contact with your God, then he can't give you orders to bring us down. You follow our laws. But the Geneva Convention is God sent, is God made. Humanitarians, they would have never put these laws in place. It had to be ordained by God. Common law, the federal court. That's a relief for us when they start treating us inhumane and occupying us under their sovereignty. General Yohana, Nate, all you other young Israelite groups that I hope you learn. I hope you learn. I don't want to make this too long because I want you to learn. You ain't going to look at a long video. You don't want an older man chastising you. This is not a chastisement. This is a teaching moment. You don't want to be taught by a father figure. You got daddy issues. So you're going to have to humble down, man. Like y'all tell all the older people, which you should. But it goes for you too. You got to humble down, and here you're going to deal with these politics. These are God's politics. You ain't going to gather the people up. You're going to keep scattering the flock until God round y'all ass up and lock y'all up and let these young dudes that is not going to let doctrine differences stop us from gathering up. I don't care how many wives you got or how many, you got 2 or 3 wives. You can't divorce them now. Nate. They can't divorce them now. You don't want to talk to nobody because you want to be the leader of all Israelites. But you will not unite them up. You got division. You causing division. You blaspheming the Holy Ghost and you causing division amongst the nations. You too, General Yohana. God got to round y'all up and take y'all out of the way, man. Else we'll never gather up. So that's why I'm teaching. God has law out here to protect us when we wake up. It's set in place. He did this. Why do they even need to be humane? Why do they need to be humane? They the devils on the earth. It had to be ordained by God, and God put it in their heart. He ruling in the kingdom of men when he set these humanitarian laws up to force them to be humane. The Constitution, God's law, peace and friendship treaty, that's ordained by God. That's the only thing that's going to help them to not kill us. And now China, he is reinforcing this. He's pointing out to you that who the devil is, because God's people are supposed to be a blessing to the rest of the world. So he's letting you know these are the synagogues of Satan. And the people that support them, the mob rule. The mob rule is the United States is the mob. And the European Union. They are the mob against the indigenous people, God's people. To keep the leaders of the mob, the enforcement of God's enemies, the international synagogue of Satan. And China is being used by God to show you what freedom is and what God had ordained and sent out here to you people that keep trying to tell us we're still in slavery. Let's listen.
To the constitute denial of a humane treatment of civilians or a form of collective punishment, both prohibited under international law. Third,
so to deny your constitutional rights and to deny your humane rights and to deny their obligation to make sure, since they're in your country, they took your government down, they said you can't govern yourself no more, you under their jurisdiction of laws and stuff, They got to make sure they treat you right. They can't deny it. It's no, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They got to do it. And if they don't, they are guilty of refusing the ordained law of the land. Let's watch. Let's see. The third is they have the obligation to allow and facilitate. Let's see.
Israel has refusing such assistance to constitute denial of a humane treatment of civilians, or of
to deny humane treatment of civilians. In other words, realizing that they are sovereign and you cannot rule over them. When you try to rule over a sovereign citizen, you are being inhumane, United States. You are being inhumane when you rule over a sovereign citizens, God's chosen people. Ain't no spiritual Jew, no special philosophy. White man got to teach, can't trust the black man to come back to God. He got to guide him back to God. All that bull crap. What else? Evangelical Christians. We got to show them what the Bible is saying. And you steady tearing pages out the Bible, injecting your doctrine in to us. Not literally tearing the pages out. They did do that, but they want to explain to us what the Bible means because we couldn't read, but we can read now. And the earth is helping us, and the Spirit of God is with us. Let's keep watching.
Form of collective punishment, both prohibited under international law. Third, Israel has obligation to allow and facilitate humanitarian assistance from third parties in three specific ways. Israel shall ensure rapid and impeded passenger of the humanitarian assistance, enable humanitarian personnel to perform their tasks, and facilitate the distribution.
See, they set FEMA up, which was against delivering humanitarian assistance to us in all of our when they attacked us, Black Wall Street, and all of our Wall Streets, and all of our attacks that they did all over the country. Here in Indiana, it was Fountain Square. We had all our businesses there. All the other places, Lanier Lake, all the other places where they tore our towns down. That was not assisting us. And this government group here refused, say we don't owe you nothing. That was our forefathers. Okay, well, you're going to suffer the penalty for your forefathers. You are assisting in the crime. So you got to suffer. You suffering the penalty right now. And God got your own people, the people you voted for, to tear you up and put you in need of humanitarian assistance. And you won't get it because you ordained a devil who don't have a heart for you or anybody else except for rich people that can benefit him. Now you got to suffer that bitter cup. The cup is passed to you.
Distribution of relief materials. Fourth, Israel has obligation of respecting and protecting humanitarian of the humanitarian ways. Israel shall ensure rapid and impeded passenger of the humanitarian assistance, enable humanitarian personnel to perform their tasks, and facilitate.
So the United States and the Edomites, to be a humanitarian and human rights, to perform human rights ordained law by God, they have to use their own people, their fake citizens, to build us back up. It's going to happen. Y'all kicking and talking about we ain't going to do this and we ain't going into slavery, we ain't going to work for y'all. Yes, you are. You're going to work for us. God going to make it happen because you wouldn't do it when you had a chance now. This is the law ordained by God that y'all got to use your own people to build us back up. But you ain't going to do it. You ain't going to do it, so he going to make you do it.
The distribution of relief.
That's why we got to possess y'all in these last days. That's why, because you're going to do it. You're going to reap what you sow. And you tell us, oh, y'all should be the main ones who be against slavery. We are against slavery. Y'all the ones that ain't against slavery. Y'all the ones that redlined our district and took all our resources and sold them to all your people around the country and made a profit all over the world. Internationally, you took the resources from us, our resources, and you stole them from us and built up your allies all over the world. Edomites were starving to death when they came over on these ships, stinking and looking like dogs, hairy, stinking with disease, and hungry. Nowhere to go, vagabonds.
Materials. Fourth, Israel has obligation of respecting and protecting humanitarian assistance personnel and materials.
So he's saying the United States is supposed to protect those materials, protect the people that's building up. In other words, pay the people. Pay the people. Y'all the government. Pay the people to build up our neighborhoods, build our businesses back up, make us self-sufficient again. That's your responsibility according to humanitarian committee. All right?
Guided by the third parties. This entails a negative obligation to refrain from causing harm to them, and a positive obligation to take active measures to protect them. We are deeply concerned about casualties.
Not only that, you hear what he's saying? If a third party wants to help us, that's what he's saying, the third party, that Israel got to protect the third party. If y'all don't have the resources, if a third party, human rights partners, if they bring humanitarian to Gaza, if they bring the relief to Gaza, y'all got to protect it and don't let your people rob it and steal the materials. And that's the same way here. Y'all have to protect our third party, anybody that we contract to bring us help when y'all don't want to help us. You got to make sure your government or your people don't attack our humanitarian relief, the people and the materials. If you call yourself a government. If not, you descend to a lower level like terrorists. You vacated your office of protecting the normal people because we sleep. We sleep right now, right? We don't know who we are. We don't know the rights and laws, and we scared y'all. Y'all ancestors did this to us. We got PTSD, post-traumatic slave syndrome, post-traumatic slave syndrome. Post-traumatic slave syndrome. Thank you, Dr. Joy Guru. We are fearful. We don't know how to move. Even when we were released out of slavery, when slavery was abolished, we didn't have nowhere to go. Y'all was supposed to build us up then, but instead, what did you do? You killed Abraham Lincoln and reneged on the 40 acres and the mule and said y'all can come and work for us and you can rent your land back out we took from you. You can rent it out. You'll never get out of debt. You can become partners, you can be undergirded under us and we'll rent this stuff out to you. You'll never get a chance to pay it off. We won't pay you enough to pay your equipment and stuff off and buy your land. We'll just let you sit back in them same shacks and farm for us, and we won't beat you no more. As long as you do what we tell you to do. We put Jim Crow laws on you to make sure. But that's the United States. That's their mob rule. That's the mob rule. They are the mob.
Among humanitarian assistance personnel in the OPT, we call on all parties to comply fully with their obligations under international humanitarian law to ensure the safety of humanitarian assistance personnel. Fifth, Israel has obligation not to, for the purpose of civilian starvation, impede humanitarian assistance from the third parties by using siege or blockade. When siege or blockade are not prohibited per se as a method of warfare under international humanitarian law. These methods become unlawful when intended to starve the civilian population. Moreover, as confirmed by the court in its OPT advisory opinion, Israel, as occupied power, has no sovereignty over or no right to exercise sovereign power in any part of the OPT.
You hear that? Now you hear that? I thought, ain't that what we just said? That's the basis of this brother's lawsuit. He understand that. We're gonna get back to that. You have no sovereign power. You can't force us under your jurisdiction. I'm gonna show you a quick video. of how to challenge their jurisdiction. Fair use. But did you hear that? Let's keep looking.
In addressing the humanitarian crisis in Palestine, multiple Security Council and General Assembly resolutions confirm and reaffirm Israel's relevant obligations, providing valuable guidance for the present case. It must be emphasized, Mr. President, the principles and rules of international humanitarian law cannot be derogated from unless explicitly provided for. In practice, the occupying power may impose appropriate restriction on the presence and activities of humanitarian assistance only under specific circumstances, which I will now outline.
Okay, he's getting ready to show you under certain situations can Israel step in, can United States step in and take sovereignty over the people. That's under bodily harm or property. The only time their law that said we delegate them, we give them the powers to step in and stop our people and their people from committing bodily harm to us and our properties. If they on the scene or we call them, they can come and stop unlawfulness. Okay, that's what he's about to say. If he don't say it, then I'm telling you.
First, activity and the movement of humanitarian personnel may be restricted only in the case of imperative military necessity. These restrictions face two critical limits. They cannot constitute a complete ban on humanitarian activities, and they must remain temporary, not permanent.
See, so if they do have to enact and step in and stop a crime from happening, they still are not the sovereign law, right? they still are not sovereign in the land because they're acting for the sovereign people of the land. They're allowed to. We delegate their authority to them if they are protecting our life and property, right? Against anybody that violate us in our land. If you hear occupying, you have to work for us in that capacity.
Notably, these restrictions are not applicable to humanitarian materials. Second, specific humanitarian arrangements may be subject to temporary technical restriction based on the reasons of security.
See that?
However, such restrictions cannot amount to either a denial of humanitarian assistance presence or a general prohibition on the access of the humanitarian.
And another thing I just thought about, we're going to get off of him, but they can't block our resources. In other words, they can't make you pay. They can't make you pay for anything to them. Whatever services they offer you with treating your water, providing electricity, that's all ours. That's ours. On this land, everything belongs to us. And if they want to sit and allocate or what you call it, step in and allocate our resources to us, provide it to us, they got to pay for the people that's providing it for us, the services, all the services. That's what he's just telling you. And they can't block it through fees and stuff. They can't block it, set up barricades. That word barricades mean you got to pay anything to stop you from getting it free of charge, freely. You can't barricade our resources and our basic needs. You can't barricade the way for us to get it to us. You can't barricade our food. You can't barricade or stop us from, getting our own food. If you got markets somewhere and it costs to produce this food, you got to pay the cost. Because you are benefiting on our land. You took charge. You are benefiting. You getting yours. You charging people for what they doing for you, but you can't charge the people. You can't charge us to receive what's ours already. That's a free service for you getting over here using our resources, our food sources, killing all our buffalo, redlining our district, working 500 years without pay. Okay, let's move on.
Of intentionally running down Deputy Larry Henderson filed this 5-page civil lawsuit on Thursday. He did so himself without an attorney. Hinton says his civil rights were violated. I looked through the complaints. The defendants include the Cincinnati Police Department, the Hamilton...
Civil rights is his God-given rights, his sovereignty. They were violated. That's what he's telling you. His sovereign civil rights, our civil rights is our God-given rights, our unalienable rights, and their duty to provide all of this protection and everything for us. And what they were supposed to do is, when he make this complaint, all those police that jumped on him, they have to be deported, put in jail, pay a $10,000 fine for each crime that he charging them with, and be deported. And they can suffer deportation. I hope y'all hear what I'm saying. Let's watch.
County Justice Center and 10 unnamed officers and deputies. Hinton claims excessive force used by police during his arrest resulted in him having physical injuries. He also focused on this: Hamilton County deputies packing the room for his arraignment on May 3rd.
Good morning, Mr. Hinton.
Hinton claims that coordinated presence was, quote, clearly intended to intimidate.
Not only that, that's PTSD, that's mental stress, that's mob justice, and that was to intimidate him to where he couldn't get a right representation. They know he didn't have a nation behind him because we haven't gathered up to this political statute that we need to gather up to this status here. Till we come back to a nation to where they know it's going to be some repercussion in this country is going to be some pushback if they mistreat our citizens. That's the main thing right there. God set this in place. The law of the land is international. He set this in place. Let's go.
On Monday, protesters gathered on the steps of the Hamilton County Courthouse. We were there as the Black Panthers and other groups voiced support for Hinton.
We sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Prosecutors say Hinton targeted Deputy Henderson after watching body camera video showing a
I don't really care about that part right there. You know, until they do right, stop reporting what happened to you for being illegal. Death for death. Death for death. God ordained that death too. He ordained that. Regardless this brother was wrong, he let it happen. The Most High let it happen because he's changing things. He's changing things. You don't get to go unaccountable no more for the crimes you commit against us in this country. You don't get to do that no more, right? You don't get to do that no more. He's stopping all of that. All right.
Cincinnati police officer shooting and killing his son. Authorities say 18-year-old Ryan Hinton was pointing a gun at an officer. These protesters say they didn't see one in the footage.
They don't see Ryan being shot down unnecessarily as being what caused Rodney to respond in the way that he did.
Iris Rowley with the Cincinnati Black United Front watched on Monday. She says the city has championed police reform and policy in the past 25 years, but she says when it comes to Ryan Hinton's case, there's still work to be done.
Why do you have to reform the police if they've been following the law all this time? Why? Why do they need reforming if they haven't been violating their oath of office? They all should be deported. All right. This is another story that's going to report on why it's in more details of the lawsuit.
And intimidation. This is what Rodney Hinton Jr. is claiming in a new federal lawsuit against Cincinnati police and other members of law enforcement. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Brett Bagansky. WCPO 9 News reporter Connor Steffen shows you why Rodney Hinton thinks they violated his civil rights.
Good morning, Mr. Hinton. In the lawsuit, Rodney Hinton Jr. claims this scene at his arraignment and this scene during his bond hearing amounted to a coordinated effort by law enforcement to intimidate him.
He was walking out and how the whole precinct seemed to be in the courtroom.
We spoke with Antoinette Holloway. She isn't a licensed attorney, but filed the complaint on Hinton Jr.'s behalf. He's representing himself in the matter.
So when you got him behind closed doors, we don't know if he's eating. We don't know what's going on.
Okay, so you see now, you black lawyers, y'all see now these black lawyers, they sold out to us. They sold out. They could have filed these lawsuits a long time ago. They could have filed these lawsuits and we can argue our own case in court. The lawsuit has been filed. They violate their oath of office. They can't beat these lawsuits. They could have helped us come back to be one people long time ago. These lawyers could have. We could have made them more richer than they ever been. Because they know the law, but yet and still they stay loyal to these Edomites for a little chump change. We could have gave them $5 a piece. 70 or 80 million of us gave them $5 a piece and made them rich overnight, man. The money that the Crumps are getting, we could have made him super rich where he never have to need any more money again. Until we can stop these people from humiliating their interests on us, against us, by usurping their authority, taking our sovereign rights from us. We're not in their slavery anymore, except for the people who are going against God's laws. But those of us that will repent and come back to the Most High God, He set this law already up for us. You talking about the Constitution ain't for us. Yasop, Deacon Yasop, all the rest of y'all, God a liar. Y'all don't know nothing, man. Y'all don't know God. You think you do, but you don't. And He used y'all to do the work He could use you to do, but you won't learn nothing else. You so caught up in your pride, you won't learn nothing else to help us. So he gonna have to move y'all out the way, man. This thing is getting too serious for y'all to hinder us from gathering up. How we gonna protect the little ones if we don't gather up? How we gonna protect our babies coming out of the womb? How we gonna protect our women and elderly if we don't gather up? If we stay divided, we gonna fall. That's how they did us coming out of Egypt. They didn't mess with the soldiers walking up front. Nate and all the strong young soldiers up front. The hell with you old people and Christians. They didn't mess with them. Amalek didn't mess with them. They got the people that were straggling behind, too weak to keep up. And that's what they're doing now, because these are cowards on the earth, man. These are devils. These are devils. I showed y'all how the men, I read that scripture, how the men that beat up the disciples that went out to teach, and they didn't have the power of God with them, and the demons got in the evil men and beat the hell out of them, tore them, wounded them, and tore their clothes off them and ran them away. Paul I know, Jesus I know, and Paul I know, but who the hell are you? They don't think we have no power. Because y'all, you know why? Because most of y'all are going without the power of the Most High. But once the people that's gathered up with, that say they keeping the laws, then they don't have no love for Israel. They really don't. They got love for their camps, man. They have love for their camps. They deny the Holy Spirit living in us. They deny that they get unction from the Holy Ghost, and they say it's because they know the law, that they can move and live and how they been, and the Holy Ghost don't guide them at all. So we got to stop this, man. And you young men who, I talked to a couple of young men, they called me, and they said, you know, the younger men that's starting their groups now, they don't care about doctrine differences. How many wives you got, or whether you just got one wife. They said, we got to gather up, because the way these nations is looking at us as their prey. We are all niggas to them, and they're all our enemies. Unless we gather up and forget these doctrine differences, they're going to destroy us, man. So I hope this help y'all, man. I hope everything the Lord has given me help us to gather up, because that's all I want, man. That's all I want, men and women. Gather up and keep God's laws, man, so we can have the power of God. Because you might make it to the wilderness. You're going to gather up. The Bible, God's words don't come back void. So you're going to make it to the wilderness, but when you hit that wilderness, if you don't have a mind to obey God, He's going to have to destroy you. You ain't going to make it into Jerusalem. So all praise to the Most High.